All right, let's just dive right into it. We're going to tackle what is probably one of the biggest, most difficult questions that any of us ever face. Seriously, people have wrestled with this for thousands of years, and today we're going to walk through it, letting Scripture be our guide. So, you know how the problem usually gets set up? It starts with something we believe about God, a core truth. He is all-powerful, omnipotent. There is literally nothing in the entire universe that he can't do. And then we add a couple more pieces to the puzzle. Not only is he all-powerful, he's also all-knowing. Nothing ever catches him by surprise. And maybe most importantly, he is perfectly and completely good. It's his very nature. So you've got this picture of a God who has all the power, knows everything, and is fundamentally good. And that picture just crashes head-on into the world we actually live in, a world filled with evil, pain, injustice, and eventually death for every single one of us. This is the massive disconnect, right? If the God we just described is real, then how on earth is this our reality? I mean, let's just be real for a second. Could God snap his fingers and make it all go away? Of course. An all-powerful God absolutely could. So the question isn't really about his ability to stop it. The real gut-level question is about his will. Why does he let it keep going?
Now, you've probably heard the most common answer a million times: free will. The argument goes that God gave us the freedom to choose, and our bad choices are the reason for all the suffering. And, there's definitely some truth to that, but it doesn't feel like the whole story, does it?
Because it brings us right back to this. If God is truly in charge of everything, if he's sovereign, then the question is still hanging there. Why does he allow it? To get to a real biblical answer, we have to start with what the Bible actually says about God's total control. So let's build this from the ground up. We have to start with this foundational idea: God's absolute sovereignty. And all that means is that God is the ultimate ruler and authority over everything that happens, period.
And this isn't just some theological idea. It's right there in Scripture. Look at Ephesians 1:11. It doesn't say he works some things or the things he likes. It says he works all things according to his will. That is an incredibly comprehensive statement. And just in case we thought that was a one-off, Isaiah 46:10 says the same thing. God's purpose will happen. He will accomplish his pleasure. So what does that mean? It means there are no accidents, there's no rogue molecule in the universe, nothing happens outside of God's ultimate plan. Okay, so if God is sovereign over all things, that forces us to ask a really hard question. Does all things include the evil that people do? Now, this is where a lot of us get stuck, but the Bible actually gives us a way to understand this. Think about the story of Joseph. His brothers did something purely evil. They sold him into slavery because they were jealous. It's horrible. But years later, when Joseph is revealing himself to them, this is what he says in Genesis 50:20. Just listen to that carefully. There are two different intentions happening in the exact same event. This slide shows it perfectly. Joseph looks at his brothers and says, "You meant evil." He doesn't let them off the hook. They are 100% responsible for their sinful actions. But in the very same sentence, he says, "But God meant it for good." He was using their evil act to accomplish his good plan of saving countless lives from famine. See, both are true at the same time. And we see this exact same principle with Pharaoh in Egypt. In Romans 9:17, Paul explains why God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God says he raised up this stubborn king for a very specific reason: to display his power to the whole world. So even Pharaoh's wicked rebellion was being used to serve God's ultimate purpose. So what does all this do to our idea of free will? Well, the Bible teaches that yes, we make real choices, but we always choose according to our nature, and our fallen human nature is naturally bent away from God. This verse from John 6:44 says it so clearly. We can't even choose to come to God unless the Father first draws us. So while our choices are real, God is sovereign over the whole process. Now, this brings us to one of the most intense and difficult passages in the whole Bible, from Romans 9. Paul asks this huge what-if question. He says, what if God, in his sovereign wisdom, allows evil and judgment on some people for the ultimate purpose of showing the incredible riches of his glory and mercy to others? It's this mind-blowing idea that even the darkest things can serve to put God's amazing character on display. I know this is all pretty heavy, pretty theological, but there is one moment in human history where all of these ideas come together in a way that is just perfect. And it turns out to be the ultimate answer to our question. That moment is the cross of Jesus Christ. Just break down this verse from Acts 2:23. Peter is preaching to a crowd in Jerusalem, and he says two things are true about Jesus' death. First, it happened according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. It wasn't an accident, it was God's plan all along. And second, he points right at the crowd and says, "You crucified and killed him." It was a wicked, evil act, and they were responsible for it. And this right here, this is the heart of it all. The cross was, without a doubt, the single greatest act of evil in the history of the universe. Human beings murdered the perfect, innocent Son of God. And yet, at the exact same time, it was the single greatest act of good. It was the moment God saved the world. God used the most wicked thing imaginable to accomplish the most beautiful thing imaginable. Okay, so if God can take the greatest evil in history and turn it into the greatest good, what does that mean for us, for our personal pain, for the suffering that we go through in our own lives? How does this huge theological answer actually help? Well, it leads us to maybe the most comforting promise in all of Scripture, Romans 8:28. And there's that phrase again, all things. Does all things include a cancer diagnosis, a car wreck, the loss of someone you love? Yes. The promise here is that for those who belong to Him, God is actively weaving even the most painful, ugly, and confusing parts of our lives into something that is ultimately good. Think about it like this. To a little kid getting a shot at the doctor's office, it is pure terror. All they know is that it hurts, it's scary, and it feels like a betrayal. Why would a parent who loves them let this happen? But the parent sees the bigger picture, right? They know that this momentary pain leads to long-term health and protection. So often, our view of suffering is like the child's. We only see the immediate pain, but God sees the eternal purpose. So let's just end by thinking about this. First, consider the alternative. If God is not in control of your suffering, if it's all just random, meaningless chance, then what hope do you really have? It's just pain without a point. But what if He is sovereign? What if He is good and all-powerful and working all things together for good? Could it be that your suffering, as real and as painful as it is not meaningless? Could it be that God is weaving it into a much bigger, more beautiful story than you can possibly see right now? Look, we're never going to have all the answers for the why behind every tragedy, not on this side of heaven. But Scripture gives us this incredible anchor in Romans 11:36. Everything is from Him, everything is through Him, and it's all ultimately for Him. That's the bedrock we can stand on. He is sovereign, He is good, and He has a purpose, even in our pain.